The Nevada desert stretched endlessly under the blazing afternoon sun of 2045, its parched landscape broken only by the most ambitious engineering project in human history. Rising impossibly high into the azure sky, the Ether Sky Corporation's space elevator stood like a gleaming silver thread connecting Earth to the heavens, its carbon nanotube cable ascending 100,000 kilometers to a counterweight station beyond geostationary orbit. Dr. Lan Pham squinted against the desert glare as she stepped off the pressurized transport pod at the base station. The massive ground terminal sprawled across several square kilometers, its sleek architecture a stark contrast to the ancient Joshua trees dotting the surrounding wasteland. After 18 hours in the deceleration chamber, testing the emergency braking systems at the 20,000-kilometer mark, she felt the familiar ache in her joints from the gravity transitions. "Welcome back, Dr. Pham." The voice belonged to her deputy, Javier Morales, a brilliant structural engineer whose calm demeanor had earned him the nickname Iceman among the crew. "How did the deceleration tests perform?" "Within acceptable parameters," Lan replied, pulling off her helmet and shaking out her long black hair. "Though I noticed some minor harmonic resonance in the upper cable sections. Nothing critical, but worth monitoring." The Ether Sky Operations Center in Las Vegas buzzed with activity as teams prepared for the historic inaugural commercial passenger flight, scheduled to depart in 48 hours. Unlike the shuttle program of decades past, the space elevator promised to revolutionize space travel by eliminating the need for rockets entirely. Passengers would simply board a climber car at ground level and ascend the cable at a steady pace, reaching the orbital platform in just 2 hours. Lan made her way through the security checkpoints and climate-controlled corridors to the main command center, where massive screens displayed real-time data from thousands of sensors along the cable's length. The engineering marvel consisted of a cable thinner than a human hair, yet stronger than steel, woven from carbon nanotubes, and reinforced with a proprietary metamaterial coating developed by Ether Sky's research division. "Dr. Pham, we need you in Conference Room Alpha immediately," announced the intercom. Lan frowned, recognizing the voice of Director Harrison Walsh, Ether Sky's chief executive. Such urgency rarely meant good news. The conference room held the key stakeholders of the project. Walsh, a silver-haired businessman whose sharp suit seemed perpetually wrinkle-free. Chief Financial Officer Rebecca Martinez, whose ledgers held more influence than engineering reports. And Chief Safety Officer Maya Park, a Korean-American former NASA astronaut whose experience in space gave her unparalleled credibility. "Dr. Pham," Walsh began without preamble, "we've detected unusual oscillations in the upper atmosphere section of the cable. Our monitoring stations registered a magnetic storm event 12 hours ago, and the cable has been experiencing periodic resonant vibrations ever since." Maya leaned forward, her expression grave. "The oscillations are concentrated around the 20,000-kilometer mark, precisely where you were conducting your deceleration tests. We're seeing amplitude variations of up to 15 centimeters. Lan felt her stomach tighten. 15 centimeters. That's well beyond our design tolerances. Have you isolated the cause? That's what we need you to determine, Walsh interjected. However, I want to make something clear. The inaugural flight is scheduled for tomorrow evening, and we have over 300 passengers already booked, including representatives from NASA, the European Space Agency, and several foreign governments. Postponing this flight would cost us millions in credibility and contracts. Director Walsh, Lan said carefully, if there's a structural integrity issue with the cable, we cannot, in good conscience, risk passenger lives. I recommend we delay the flight until we can thoroughly investigate these oscillations. Walsh's eyes hardened. Dr. Pham, I appreciate your caution, but we have investors breathing down our necks and competitors waiting for any sign of weakness. Orbita Corp has been spreading rumors about our safety protocols for months. We cannot give them ammunition. Maya spoke up, her voice steady but firm. Director, I've reviewed the preliminary data. These oscillations could indicate a critical failure point in the metamaterial coating. If that coating fails at altitude, the structural integrity of the entire cable could be compromised. Could indicate, Walsh emphasized. We deal in certainties, not possibilities. I need a definitive assessment within 12 hours, Dr. Pham. If the cable is safe, we proceed as planned. Lan exchanged glances with Maya, seeing her own concerns reflected in the astronaut's eyes. I'll need unrestricted access to all monitoring data and permission to deploy additional sensors along the cable length. Granted, but remember 12 hours, not a minute more. As the team dispersed, Maya caught up with Lan in the corridor. This is insane, she whispered. Those oscillations are following a pattern I've seen before during the Columbia incident. We're looking at potential resonance cascade failure. I know, Lan replied grimly. But we need concrete proof. Walsh won't listen to theoretical projections. Over the following hours, Lan assembled her crisis team in the engineering department. Javier arrived with coffee and a grim expression, followed by Dr. Sarah Okafor, the metamaterials specialist who had helped design the cable's protective coating. I've run the oscillation data through every model we have, Javier reported, projecting holographic displays that showed the cable's stress distribution. The resonance pattern suggests external interference, possibly from the solar storm that passed through the Earth's magnetosphere yesterday. Sarah nodded agreement. The metamaterial coating contains superconducting elements designed to distribute stress loads evenly. But if those elements are disrupted by electromagnetic interference, we could see localized failure points. Show me the critical zones, Lan demanded. The hologram shifted, highlighting 3 distinct areas along the cable, where stress concentrations exceeded normal parameters. The largest appeared exactly at the 20,000-kilometer mark, coinciding with the location of the emergency stations used for maintenance and passenger transfer. If the coating fails at this point, Sarah explained, the naked carbon nanotube structure would be exposed to the full force of atmospheric ionization and plasma currents. The cable could literally catch fire in the thermosphere. Maya entered the room breathless from running. We've got another problem. I just intercepted communications suggesting Orbiticorp has been feeding negative stories to the media. Channel 7 is planning to run a piece tonight, questioning the safety of the space elevator, timed perfectly to coincide with tomorrow's launch. Sabotage, Javier asked. Economic warfare, Lan corrected. If they can create enough public doubt, our insurance companies might force a postponement, giving Orbiticorp time to complete their own elevator project in Ecuador. The team worked through the night analyzing data streams from hundreds of sensors. As dawn broke over the Nevada desert painting, the cable in shades of gold, and Rose Lan made a disturbing discovery. Look at this pattern, she said, highlighting a specific frequency band on her display. These aren't random oscillations. They're building on each other, creating a standing wave pattern that could amplify to destructive levels. Sarah paled as she studied the data. If this continues, we'll reach critical resonance in approximately 18 hours. Right around the time the inaugural flight reaches the 20,000-kilometer mark. And if it reaches critical resonance, Maya asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Catastrophic failure. The cable would snap and anything on it would be lost. Lan stood, decision crystallizing in her mind. We need to inspect the cable directly. Maya, I know you're rated for EVA operations. Are you willing to make an emergency ascent to the 20,000-kilometer station? Maya nodded without hesitation. When do we leave? We need to brief Director Walsh first, Javier interjected. If we're taking the emergency climber, he'll need to authorize it. The confrontation in Walsh's office was explosive. The director slammed his hand on his desk, sending coffee splashing across financial reports. Absolutely not. I will not authorize an emergency ascent based on theoretical projections. The climber systems are needed for final passenger testing. Director Lan said, fighting to keep her voice level. We have 18 hours before potential structural failure. If we don't identify and fix this problem now, tomorrow's launch could end in disaster. Could, maybe, possibly, Walsh shouted. I'm running a business, not a university research project. The launch proceeds as scheduled. Maya stepped forward, her astronaut training evident in her composed posture. Sir, I've witnessed structural failures in space. The warning signs are clear. If we ignore them, we'll have more than financial losses to worry about. We'll have 300 deaths on our conscience. You're both relieved of duty pending a disciplinary review, Walsh declared. Security will escort you out of the facility. Javier, you're now in charge of final safety clearance. Javier looked stricken. Director, I respectfully request you reconsider. Dr. Pham's analysis is sound. One more word and you'll join them, Walsh threatened. As security guards approached, Lon caught Javier's eye and mouthed silently, "Emergency Protocol 7." The young engineer's eyes widened with understanding. Emergency Protocol 7 was a fail-safe built into the space elevator systems designed to allow senior engineers to override administrative decisions in cases of imminent danger. It required 3 senior staff members to authenticate the protocol using biometric scanners at specific locations throughout the facility. That evening, as news vans gathered outside the Ether Sky complex and protesters held vigils calling for the launch to be delayed, 3 figures moved through the shadows of the facility's maintenance areas. Maya and Javier had used their keycard access one final time before security could be updated, accessing the emergency climber bay through service tunnels. Sarah uploaded the latest resonance data to my tablet, Javier whispered as they approached the sleek emergency climber. The oscillations are accelerating faster than projected. We might have less time than we thought. The emergency climber was a sophisticated vehicle capable of ascending the cable at emergency speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour. Unlike the passenger cars with their luxurious accommodations, this was a purely functional vessel designed for maintenance and rescue operations. Maya conducted the pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. Power systems nominal life support fully charged repair equipment secured. We'll need approximately 4 hours to reach the critical zone. 4 hours, up 2 hours for inspection and repairs, 4 hours down, Lon calculated. That puts us back here just as the passenger launch begins. If they don't abort it, Javier added. They will, Maya said grimly, because we're going to give them proof they can't ignore. The emergency climber began its ascent as darkness fell over Nevada. Unlike the gradual acceleration planned for passenger vehicles, the emergency car shot up the cable with the urgency of its mission. Through the transparent walls, Earth fell away below them. First the lights of Las Vegas, then the whole of the American Southwest, until they could see the curve of the planet itself. At 5,000 kilometers, they passed through the first of the atmosphere layers, feeling the slight vibration as charged particles interacted with the cable's electromagnetic field. At 10,000 kilometers, they entered the thermosphere, where the aurora borealis created brilliant green curtains of light around the cable. Start recording everything, Lon instructed, as they approached the 15,000-kilometer mark. I want complete documentation of whatever we find. At 18,000 kilometers, the cable's oscillations became visible to the naked eye. The massive structure swayed back and forth with a graceful but ominous rhythm, each movement covering dozens of meters despite the cable's incredible tensile strength. My God, Maya breathed. I can actually see the resonance waves propagating along the structure. The 20,000-kilometer station was a modular platform designed to serve as an emergency waypoint and transfer hub. As their climber docked, automated systems scanned their credentials and, finding them current, granted access. The station's artificial gravity, generated by its rotation around the cable, provided a stable working environment. Lon immediately headed for the maintenance bay, while Maya began external EVA procedures. Javier stayed in the command center, monitoring the cable's vital signs and maintaining communication with the ground. Lan, you need to see this, Maya's voice crackled through the comm system. She was outside the station in her EVA suit, using specialized tools to examine the cable's metamaterial coating. Lan joined her in the airlock, struggling into her own suit. They emerged onto the external platform, just as the sun rose behind Earth's limb, casting brilliant light along the cable's length. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. The metamaterial coating was failing. Instead of the seamless, mirror-like surface that should have covered the cable, they found areas where the coating had separated, exposing the raw carbon nanotube structure beneath. Worse, the exposed areas were showing signs of plasma burn, indicating that charged particles in the atmosphere were already beginning to erode the cable itself. Sarah was right, Maya said, her voice tight with concern. The electromagnetic interference from the solar storm disrupted the coating's superconducting matrix. It's unraveling. Lan attached her diagnostic scanner to the damaged section, watching as data flowed across her heads-up display. The failure is propagating along the stress lines. At this rate, we'll have complete coating failure within 6 hours. And then, the exposed nanotubes will heat up from plasma interaction weaken, and the cable will snap under its own tension. Working with desperate efficiency, they began applying emergency patches, using a novel technique Sarah had developed in the lab, but never tested in space. The process involved spraying a polymer solution over the damaged areas, then using focused electromagnetic pulses to reorganize the molecular structure into a temporary metamaterial substitute. For 2 hours, they worked against the clock, applying patches to dozens of damaged sections. The job was made more difficult by the cable's continued oscillation, which threatened to fling them into space despite their safety tethers. One more section, Maya gasped, her oxygen supply running low. There, near the primary stress junction. As she reached for the repair applicator, a massive oscillation wave passed through the cable. The platform shuddered, and Maya was thrown against the cable structure with tremendous force. Her helmet cracked on impact, and she began drifting away from the platform. Maya. Lan launched herself after her colleague, using her suit's maneuvering thrusters to close the gap. She caught Maya just as her damaged suit began venting atmosphere. Working together, they managed to return to the airlock, where emergency sealant repaired Maya's helmet. Shaken, but determined, they completed the final patch, just as Javier's voice came through the comm system. Signal from Earth. Director Walsh is demanding you return immediately. He's threatening to have you arrested for sabotage and theft of company property. Tell him we'll be down in 4 hours, Lan replied, and that his inaugural flight is safe to proceed, but only if our patches hold. The descent was harrowing. As they dropped through the atmosphere layers, the cable's oscillations seemed to diminish, suggesting their emergency repairs were working. But Lan knew their patches were only temporary fixes. A permanent solution would require shutting down the elevator for weeks, possibly months. They reached the ground station just as the sun painted the Nevada desert in shades of orange and red. News helicopters circled overhead, and crowds had gathered at the facility's gates. The inaugural passenger flight was scheduled to begin in 2 hours. Security guards were waiting for them at the climber bay, but so was Sarah Okafor, holding a tablet showing the latest sensor data. Your patches worked, she said excitedly. The resonance pattern has stabilized. We're seeing normal stress distributions throughout the critical zone. Walsh appeared moments later, flanked by corporate attorneys and public relations specialists. Dr. Pham, Dr. Park, you're both under arrest for violation of safety protocols and theft of company property. Director, Javier interrupted, I think you should see these readings first. The tablet showed the before and after data from the cable monitoring systems. The dangerous oscillations had indeed been eliminated, and the structural integrity of the cable was now within normal parameters. Furthermore, Sarah added, we've identified the fundamental flaw in our coding application process. The patches they've applied don't just fix the immediate problem. They demonstrate a solution we can implement across the entire cable system. Walsh studied the data, his expression unreadable. Around them, the bustle of launch preparations continued as passengers began arriving for their historic journey. How long will these patches hold? He finally asked. Indefinitely if we continue to monitor and maintain them, Lan replied. But we'll need to implement a comprehensive coding renewal program within the next year. And the inaugural flight. Safe to proceed as scheduled. Walsh nodded slowly, then turned to the security guards. Release them. Dr. Pham, Dr. Park, you're not to leave this facility until after the flight. I want you in the control room monitoring every second of the ascent. The inaugural passenger flight departed precisely on schedule as the Nevada desert cooled in the evening air. 300 passengers, including scientists, dignitaries, celebrities, and paying customers, settled into the luxurious climber car as it began its historic ascent. In the control room, Lon watched the telemetry with hawk-like intensity. Every sensor reading every structural measurement, every sign of vibration or stress was scrutinized as the passenger car rose through the atmosphere layers. Passing 5,000 kilometers, the flight controller announced. All systems nominal. 10,000 kilometers. Passengers are enjoying the view of Earth's curvature. 15,000 kilometers. Entering the thermosphere zone with no issues. As the car approached the critical 20,000 kilometer mark, Lon held her breath. The patches she and Maya had applied were holding perfectly, distributing stress evenly and preventing the resonance patterns that had threatened the cable's integrity. 20,000 kilometers passed safely. The controller announced to cheers throughout the facility. Welcome to space, ladies and gentlemen. 2 hours after departure, the passenger car reached the orbital platform, completing humanity's first commercial space elevator journey. The passengers disembarked onto the platform, many weeping with joy as they experienced true weightlessness and gazed down at the Earth below. Over the following days, the space elevator's success dominated global headlines. Journey to space now takes 2 hours, proclaimed news outlets around the world. The EtherSky stock price soared, and bookings for future flights exceeded all projections. In a quiet ceremony, a week later, Dr. Lon Pham received the Space Innovator of the Year award from the International Aerospace Consortium. However, she declined all requests for media interviews, preferring to let the achievement speak for itself. Standing at the base of the space elevator, as the sun set behind the mountains of Nevada, Lon watched another passenger car begin its ascent, carrying dreams and hopes toward the stars. The massive cable stretched endlessly upward, a bridge between worlds that had seemed impossible just decades earlier. Maya joined her at the observation deck, both women watching, as Earth's first space elevator fulfilled its promise of making space travel as routine as air travel had once become. The oscillation crisis had been resolved, the coding technology improved, and a new era of human expansion into the cosmos had truly begun. Think we'll see cities up there one day? Maya asked, gesturing toward the orbital platform, barely visible as a distant star. Lon smiled, remembering the wonder in the passengers' eyes as they experienced weightlessness for the first time. I think we're going to see things we can't even imagine yet. Above them, the cable sang quietly in the desert wind, a silver thread connecting humanity's past to its infinite future among the stars. The space elevator stood not just as an engineering triumph, but as proof that human ingenuity and determination could overcome any obstacle, even the vast emptiness of space itself. As night fell over Nevada, more passengers boarded the evening flight, ready to experience the magic of ascending to orbit in just 2 hours. The age of mass space travel had begun, and with it, the next chapter in humanity's greatest adventure.